In this video, we're going to be going through millionaire habits that I've adopted that have changed my life. A recent study found that most millionaires didn't actually inherit their wealth, they've had to accumulate it themselves. And so I think when you look at how some of these people have made their money, because they come from different areas, different careers, you really have to distill it down to a few key habits. And so it's this combination of consistent application of these daily habits that really compound over time. I've basically spent my whole career working in the finance industry, and I'm an ex-investment analyst building systems. This is one of the things that they talk about in Atomic Habits a lot, and for me, this has probably been one of the bigger game changers. The idea is that rather than focusing on individual goals, you focus on the steps and the sequences and therefore the structure you need in order to achieve those goals. For me, instead of saying, I'm going to publish a YouTube video, I focus on the steps that are necessary and therefore the systems that are necessary in order to get to that video. So that might be spending half an hour every day going through the ideas in my head. One of the unexpected benefits is that this has really freed up a lot of time in other areas of my life. A perfect example is I've got a backlog of about 100 or so video ideas, and it's because I've specifically set aside a fixed amount of time every few days in order to go through some ideas, to be doing the research. So when I actually get to the point to sit down and script a video, I've got a backlog which I can refer to already. Quite easy to get overwhelmed by a larger task, but if you've already broken it down into smaller prerequisite pieces, you've potentially front-loaded a lot of the work already. So how can you apply this to your own life? I think the key thing is to identify an area in your life that you want to change or you want to improve, and break down some of the systems that are going to be necessary in order to get there. A good example of building a system is maybe not necessarily that you have the goal to lose weight, but instead you just say, I'm going to exercise 3 times a week for 30 minutes, moving out of your comfort zone. Another important habit that millionaires have is that they're constantly moving out of their comfort zone, whether it's expanding their business into a new industry, whether it's hiring someone who they've never hired before. And so by challenging yourself to do new things, you eventually find yourself in a situation where you will strike gold eventually. For me, starting this YouTube channel was absolutely a step outside of my comfort zone. There are so many skills that I didn't feel as though I had, maybe I still don't have, but I'm working on them and I'm building them. And I think some of the more tangible improvements are you potentially can accumulate new skills, which you might be able to apply to other parts of your life. So maybe you work on your communication skills by doing something completely new, by joining a new club, and it means you're in a situation where you can apply that to your work. Maybe you do acting lessons or something like that. And then when it comes to giving a presentation, you've overcome your fear of public speaking. Having a good friendship group. Who you decide to surround yourself with, I think, says a lot about you. Now, some people take this to kind of psychopathic levels where it's just like, unless your friends are rich, they're not worthy of your time. And I'm just like, no. It's perfectly fine to have friends who are supportive of you, who you like spending time with. But I think it's also perfectly beneficial and a really good idea to also surround yourself with people who push you into new things. Now, those don't necessarily have to be financial goals, they don't have to be career goals. You might just have, this person over here, a friend of mine, is a good parent and I want to be a good parent. Like, that's great. That has no conceivable economic benefit, but I think it's something you should always be striving towards. And so I think having a supportive network of friends will pay dividends over the longer term. Maybe when your confidence is waning about a new project, should I carry on with this job application? Just having someone who's whispering in your ear saying, yeah, go on then, it's really going to be worth it in the end. So this doesn't necessarily mean that you have to cut friends off or anything as dramatic as that. I think it can just be a case of potentially identifying new friendship groups, but also definitely make time to always spend time with your friends and nurture some of those friendships. They can be a really important part of your life over the longer term. Automate your finances. This is something that I've picked up on from The Automatic Millionaire by David Buck. It's a really good book, which I would encourage people to read. Automating your finances, I think, is a good example of building systems. It's not necessarily the case that you'll have a goal to save a particular amount every month and you've got to remember to do that. Say you want to have a certain amount of money saved up by this time next year. You divide that amount by 12 and that gives you how much you need to save. And rather than remembering to put the money in there, all you do is you just set up the direct debit. Money goes boop, boop. How you should be automating your finances. Now, quickly, one of the ways I've applied this to my own personal circumstances is we have another video, link is in the description below, about how to make your kids millionaires. The key thing that underpins all of that is I just set up automatic deposits. First of the month, money goes into the ISAs for my 2 boys. Done deal. Nice and easy. Just set it and forget it. You want to improve your finances, and then seeing if there's a system that you can set up in order to facilitate that can really just help to alleviate some financial woes. And of course, less admin, less of an admin headache. Wouldn't we all like that? Time blocking. Now, the idea about time blocking, there are a few different variations of it from different people, but the idea about time blocking is you focus on individual tasks and you for a specific quantity of time. And this really allows you to prioritize the things that you have to get done that day. One of the benefits that I've certainly found from this is I can be a bit of a scatterbrain. And so by knowing I've got the next 45 minutes blocked out to do this thing, I find it much easier to stay focused on doing those tasks. Create reasonably loose daily or weekly schedules. I personally, I don't think you have to have every second of every day doing something productive or anything like that. But I just think having consistent times when you're going to go to the gym on this time, on this day, as often as you reasonably can do. The next one is to simplify your life. Now, this is one that I resonated with a lot. And I think it's very easy to mischaracterize this as just, living in a hovel because you don't need electricity or...
Oh, well, that would simplify things for everyone but you.
No, that's not what it's about. For me, it was about examining particular parts of my life, really in detail and seeing what I could do to simplify them. A key one for me is I had pensions from all of my various workplaces all over the place, getting charged fees left, right and centre, and so I decided to consolidate them all into a single SIP. And that's made life so much easier. I'm only getting charged fees on one pension account, I know where all the money is, I know where it's invested, I can see what the returns are, and it's just a really simple trick like that is just so much less stressful than having to manage all these various pension pots dotted around. Now, when you've got your simplifying glasses on, I don't think you necessarily have to be stingy. It's just about deciding what really adds value to your life, what really is going to help you achieve your longer term objectives, and really focusing on those. So how are some practical ways that you can simplify your life? But I think the key thing for me is, and this is something we've talked about a lot on this channel, is making sure that the energy or the expense that you have to go to is proportional to the utility that you get from it. Do you need to have all these bank accounts, all these credit cards that you are trying to squirrel away points on, and actually you might forget to pay the bill one time, even though you've got the money? So actually having fewer cards where you can accumulate those benefits is probably a better way of doing it. That brings me nicely on to the next one, thinking about the longer term. One of the key things, I think, one of the key hacks that millionaires have really focused on is they understand that compounding is important and it takes the effort out by focusing on a longer time horizon. The longer you give it, the more of the heavy lifting compounding can do for you. Whether that's money, whether that's habits, whether that's relationships. So a good example is choosing to work now, accumulate money earlier on in your life so that you can retire later. Enjoy your retirement rather than have to spend money on things you don't really need now, and then you have to work later and longer, and you don't get to benefit from compound interest, and you can't enjoy your retirement as much. I like Peter Drucker's quote on this. The best way to predict the future is to create it. One of the ways that I've applied this to my own life. So what are sort of the tangible improvements that I've noticed in my life? I think feelings I've got a bit more control because I'm not necessarily as bothered by the shorter day-to-day hassles. The kind of increased financial security is also another key big thing. For me, the key one here is thinking about the long term rather than focusing on the long term. It can be very easy to just squirrel away all your money, to never go on holiday, to never indulge, to never buy anything nice. And to me, that's just completely pointless. I've never really understood that attitude towards money or towards life. Working with your energy levels, not against them. Now, anyone who has followed this channel you don't have to follow it for very long to know that I am not a fan of all this hustle culture bullshit. Getting up at 5 a.m. and cold plunge and then sauna and cold plunge again and run for 1,000 miles. No. I've 2 kids under the age of 2. How am I going to fit a 4 a.m. cold plunge in? The key thing for me that I really focused on when I've started to read about this is embracing my energy levels. So if I wake up in the morning and I have energy, then yeah, I'm going to try and exercise. I'm going to try and go for a run. But if my youngest has been up in the night feeding and I don't have the energy to do it, then I'm going to focus on something a bit less physically intensive. Maybe I choose that time slot, that half-hour time slot, to read a book, to listen to a podcast, come up with ideas for the channel, to do a bit of scripting. And so by working with my energy levels rather than fighting against them, I've actually found it to be a really productive way of getting things done. I'm not pissing in the wind or anything like that. So just be honest with yourself and use that to not necessarily as an excuse to not do anything all day or to have a slow start for the day, but just reevaluate and readjust how you're going to plan the day and what your overall objectives are going to be for that day. So what have we talked about in this video? We've gone through some of the millionaire habits that I've picked up personally and how they've changed my life for the better and how they've tangibly made effects and how hopefully you can apply them to your life too.